Namaskar, everyone. Welcome to this another series, another session of Indic Studies Toronto. The topic today is the idea of Bharat, a nation united. Our speaker today is Shri Sharad Mohan, who is an American entrepreneur, a social analyst, and an author of three successful books. Apart from that, being a student of history, he loves traveling, seeing the world, and learning from rich human heritages. So, Namaskar, Sharadji, and please welcome and continue.
Namaskar, Samir ji, and thanks Indic Group for giving me this opportunity to connect with the people. I was in Bharat just 4 5 days back for a 3 weeks tour, and it was good to connect with Bharat after almost 1.5 year of this COVID pandemic, where everybody had to go through, and some still going through the tough time. So, this topic for the day is the idea of Bharat, a nation united. And before I proceed, the way we would construct this discussion is I'll start with a prayer, and then I'll give you a very brief overview of the construct, which I will be following in next 35 to 40 minutes. So, welcome everyone, and let's go to the next page. So I start with a prayer. If you are a Sanatani or if of any faith, it's just remember your whoever you pray. This is just to thank the Creator. So Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Par Brahma, Tasmai Guruve Namah. And for all my Sikh brothers in Toronto and California and US, Ek Onkar Satnam Sri Vaheguruji. So with that, let me get started. There is a very ancient shaloka in right now. It's part of the Ramayana, but it's also in Ved. It's called Janani Jan Bhumishit Swargadapi Garyasi. This particular shalok is also in the Nepal's flag. They mention that. Now, what is this shaloka trying to say? The reference is in Ramayana, Rishi Bhardwaj, once addressing to Sri Ram, he said, Mitrani dhan dhanyani prajanam sam taniv janani jan bhumishcha swargadapi garyasi. It translates into friends, riches, and grains are highly honored in this world, but mother and motherland are superior to heaven. And that's a very big statement coming from Sri Ram. Similar mention is in the Ramayana later Khand, where Sri Ram talks to Lakshman after they have won Lanka. He's saying, Api Swarnamai Lanka Name Lakshman Rochate Janani Jan Bhumishit Swarga Dapi Garyasi. This translates into Lakshman, even this golden Lanka, and we all know that Sri Lanka was made of gold and it was called Golden Lanka, does not appeal to me. Mother and motherland are superior to heaven. And this is coming from Sri Ram. So, what is this discussion in India and across the world regarding the nationality and all those things? It's very Western concept, the debate which we see on our televisions, and I won't go to the political part of it, but it's very relevant to the viewers. I would say is we are very much confused. A lot of people I went to India, they're very much confused with, they think it's a political rather than it's what the Indian value system is, but that's it has to be explained to those people. We, for Indians, for the Indians, when I say Indians, I am talking about the Indian civilization, not given by the colonial masters, which didn't even know about the Harappan civilization 200 years back, and before that they said that these are primitive nomadic Aryan tribes coming from Caspian Sea. So to those people who were so ignorant and whatever, um, India is a very old civilization. India as a country, maybe 1947, based on the United Nations Charter, but we are an old civilization, older than almost as old as the existence of humanity, and that's where the divide or clarity has to be understood. People are mixing a lot of things when they talk about nationality and patriotism, and they bring the Western concept, and this is where all this confusion starts. For us, nation comes first, Rashtra came first, then came nationality. And if you go to the Western scholars, their nationhood stories, everything started 400 years back when the colonial masters, whether it's French, the British, the Spanish, and the Portuguese, the four of them, they started traveling because of their better equipment and well organized modern army and weaponry. They started capturing the world as if the whole world was waiting as the booty for them to capture and distribute and enjoy. So they then gave a lot of these concepts, who are the race theory then came in, the civilization versus primitive versus ancient, everything they defined, and we took it, our scholars took it, and they took it as if it's their is the gospel. Nobody ever questioned. There are a few scholars like Gokhale and Tilak, and few of our native Indian scholars who did write their own research, but by and large, we were very much sold out by the Western scholars, the English speaking scholars, and we thought that they are the gospel of truth, and whatever is coming from them is what it is. And then the whole concept of nation and all those things got muddled. So for the West, the state and nationhood has a very different meaning. For them, and I'll read from my book so that I'm sticking to the timeline and also cover a lot of areas. So what I will do is I will touch little paragraph from my book, and then I'll do the explanation. So from the Western audience perspective or the Western scholar perspective, the concept of nation state is notoriously difficult to define. A working and imprecise definition is a type of state that conjoins the political entity of a state to the cultural entity of a nation, from which it aims to derive its political legitimacy to rule and potentially its status as a sovereign state. The origin and early history of the nation states are disputed. There are two theoretical questions that have been debated. First, which came first, nation or the nation state? And second, is the nation state a modern or an ancient idea? Scholars continue to debate. Again, these are Western scholars, and our scholars have also fallen into those traps. Most commonly, the idea of nation state was and is associated with the rise of modern system of states, often called Westphalian system. This is reference to the Treaty of Westphalia in 1648. The nation states have their own characteristics that today may be taken for granted. So for West, this is what the nation is. For us, Bharat was 1,000 years back with the king Bharat, and then mentioned in Ramayana. But even before that, we had Aryavat, right? Aryavat was a land which it was not. It was Aryavat does not mean a race called Aryan. Aryavat was a land which was also referred to as Jambu Deep in Mahabharata. This was a land which followed a rule of law set by Manu. Now, when I said Manu, a lot of bell will ring. People will think I'm bringing the caste angle to it. Manu was a Manuwadi, and all these are all political. Let us keep politics aside. For the student of history and anthropology, you need to research and conclude your way rather than reading a translation and narrative given by the Western scholars or your own so-called secular Indian scholars. You should read the original text, and to read the original text, do you not understand Sanskrit? because original text cannot be in English or Hindi or Tamil, Marathi. It has to be in Sanskrit. And if you don't understand the language, then probably you are not the right person to deal with the topic. So do not conclude your way. That is what I'm trying to say. Even I'm not a scholar in Sanskrit, and I have to take help from the scholars. And again, scholars will have their own interpretation for many obvious reasons. So unless and until somebody knows the subject, Sanskrit, and open the original text, you cannot decipher the way it is intended. And and that's where the entire educational system in India, especially the history part of it, was written by those folks who never read Sanskrit. And what name I am mentioning and what university in India, in the India national capital I'm mentioning. So the scholars there claim things which is totally irrelevant and not part of our ethos. So coming back to the nation, Aryavat was the land where the people who lived here, they followed certain culture, certain rituals, certain way of living, respect to the elders, respect for the trees, the mountains, the rivers, and also the animals, right? And one of the important animals at that point of time was naturally the milk-giving cows. So all these things built into the part of the Indian civilization, Indian culture, and this was much before the colonial master came 400 years back, or even the Mughal came almost say 1300, 1100 AD. So it was much before that. The idea of Bharat was there, and coming back to the following the rule of law, Manu had his own rule, which was again wrongly interpreted, because it was the entire classification of the society was based on the Varna system. And if you read today's biology, even they have a classification between species, between xylem, phylum, all kind of categorization of living beings. So similar logic was in our Varna system, where we had Gotra, we had species, whether we are Asuras or Manavas, and then Gandharva. So all those classification was done by our ancient scholars into various scriptures, and then they finally broke it into a labor-based classification, which we call Varna system, the four Varnas. And there were movement of people from one Varna to another based on the work. And there's a lot of anecdotal example where the Ramayana, the Mahabharata, and even the Vedas were written by people who were from in today's 1947 onward India. Today they will be called Dalit, but at that time it was different workforce. Like the farmers were a Dalit because they were a peasantry class. They were serving somebody. Anybody who used to do service was considered to be into that Varna. So anybody who followed Manu's set laws, right, which is classification of this Varna system and all, was from the land of Bharat, which is Aryavat. So the reason why I'm bringing this is the idea of Bharat is not 1947. It was much before that, and we should be proudly protecting this idea instead of diluting it, because for West, the nation, the nationality came first. So they were French or they were British, and then they started carving their land, and then they formed the country. For us, Aryavat was thousand years back, 40-50,000 years, much before that. We were Aryavat. And then it's very recently this nationality, Indian, and all those things came. But we were always a nation first. That's a huge difference, because if you go to New Delhi, India Gate, there are 25,000 soldiers, our martyrs' name mentioned on that India Gate. And do you know who are these people? Most of them, 25,000 plus. They fought in World War One and World War Two. And why did they fought in World War One and World War Two? Was it for Aryavarth? Was it for Bharat? No, it was fought for somebody else idea of a nation, and they were carving their own landmark, their land and own state, and we were pulled for that. Bharat never fought for the expansion of Aryavart, killing thousand and thousand of people. So the history, the way we understood, the way it's written, has always been confusing, and that's where, through the book, which I'll be mentioning here, my book, second book, India, an Unbroken Civilization from thousand years, and the Aryans, the Dravidians, the Adivasis. Adivasis to me means the indigenous people. They are our unifiers. They are not a different race or different people. They are not the reason why India should break. They are the reason why we are united, not today, but from thousand years. And I'll come to those in the relevant chapter. So moving on to the next slide. So the way I have constructed my book, this discussion is about Bharat, which is a part of my book. So I'll quickly go through that, and then I'll come to the topic. I started with three parts. The precursor. The precursor is how did this idea to write this book came to me. And I was traveling across India when I was not here, and I met a lot of people from north, south, west, east, and came to understand their idea of Bharat and Indian culture. And from north to south, from east to west, everywhere the common theme was same. It was same whether they speak Tamil, they speak the tribal language, they spoke Punjabi, Haryanvi, Marathi, Malayali, Kannad. Everywhere the idea of Bharat was same. And what is the idea of Bharat? So the way, and I'll quickly go through my book again, paragraph. Our ancient scholars have given four things which defines our Indian civilization, which is the dharma, the artha, the kama, and moksha. So the four fundamental principles on which we are based is dharma, earth, kam, and eventually moksha. In Mahabharata, Vidur tries to dissuade Dhritarashtra from being blinded by his love for Duryodhan and thereby depriving the Pandavas from their rightful share. He says, and there is a shaloka, pardon me for it's written in English. So, Tyajikam kulyar the garam yar the kulam tyajat gramam janapadya sarthi atmarti prithim tyajat. This means sacrifice an individual for a family, sacrifice a family for a village, sacrifice a village for a state, and sacrifice land for the soul or conscience. This is the fundamental principle based on which the country fights a war. A country, which is a nation, is willing to sacrifice lives of some of its citizens because the whole, which is Brahm, is more important than a part. Now, this is what defines our Indic civilization. And this is hugely different from a Western way of looking things, where it's all, in the name of development, the amount of, changes have been made to the environment. It's for us to see, right? And then now we are all crying for global warming and the glaciers melting, mountain melting, Kilimanjaro in Kenya, or even Mount Everest. Recently, there was a lot of because of the warming of the temperature, Mount glaciers are receding. This was all because of there was the four fundamental principle on which the Indian civilization is based is missing, and people are going back to that. When we used to say all these things earlier, we were called they are primitive people, and now people are talking about preserving trees, preserving rivers, preserving mountains, right? And even the chemical based agriculture, which was the highlight of the farm revolution in the West, right, where the productivity of the field, the yield was many, many times using chemical fertilizers. Now they are moving to the organic farming, which again is back to uh, the cow dungs and all those kind of organic things, which people are not saying should be used. So eventually they are all coming to that realization, which we had told many, many years back, and we were called primitive. So the to all the students and the people who are listening and the scholars, all I can say is history, even if it's coming from a Nobel laureate or even if it's coming from so who's who of the world, it has to be taken with pinch of salt. History has to be only written by the people who by the own people. History cannot be written by the outsiders. And unfortunately in India, all the top scholars, historians, especially the so-called secular historians, they still refer these uh, source from the Western scholars. They're so I'm surprised when I go to the Indian um, schools and colleges and hear to them, they're still in their PhD program, they still proudly quote all the Western scholars as if they are there, they are the last on the knowledge, right? I'm so surprised. There is still that thing to do research on your own, have your own measuring scale, your own parameters. Everything is missing in India. That culture is missing. Research culture is missing. Too much of they're awed by the Western scholars somehow. They keep on quoting so and so Western Nobel laureate, so and so this and that. And we have seen here. I mean, I have met so many of them in US while writing my book, and I don't think we should be overly impressed. Yes, they have a certain way of seeing things, but they can't write a history and anthropology for you. No way. They just cannot write for you the whole their whole idea. And I'm also a student of science, right? I did my engineering, so I understand science, I understand technology part of the science. Science can be very big, but then to convert into a technology where you have aeroplane or you have artificial intelligence driven robot, that's a technology part of the science, right? Implementation part of the science. I understand all those things, and this is where what my such speaks or talks is trying to bring to our Indian people is, you cannot disown your own scriptures. Do not read your scriptures just from a story perspective. There is science, there is history, there's anthropology, there is so many things, there's a way of life in it. Just take it and research it. That does not mean, a lot of people confuse when you mention about your text and all. They think that you are becoming too you are against the progress, you're not progressing, and the kids should be reading math and science. There is no conflict between those two. Okay, this is a richer knowledge, and the current modern science and math, they both can coexist. They both can learn from each other if that makes the other side happy. Yes, but you just cannot pass a statement that the anything Indian is primitive and not scientific, because it's not so. As I said, the Harappan civilization 200 years was not known, and the Britishers said that it's a very primitive people. The Aryans came from Caspian Sea. They came out with the entire Aryan theory, and that's where my next topic is, the divide. So the way the colonial masters to support their rule in India, they came out with a lot of divide theory, and that's where they created this Aryan, the Dravidian, and Dravidian theory is still going on in South, especially one state, Tamil Nadu. And I have a lot of Tamil friends. I have been in Tamil Nadu, sat with them and discussed, but it's an emotional issue in a way that it's 300-400 years of brainwash, so it would not go away like that. So we have to be consistent. We will not give up. We will be consistent, because giving up is a sign of weakness. But we will make them understand that this is given by a divide professors from the colonial era. and then the Adivasi divides, right? So they have divided our Adivasis. And when I say Adivasis, a lot of us, they think Adivasis are the dark people who are like the Andamanis or some tribal people, but the Adivasis also include the Mongoloid race of Northeast. And they were, if you read the race theory, and if you read Shiv Puran, the first human was somewhere in Tibet. And then and he was probably kind of Mongoloid, because the oldest human found, as per the Western scholars, was some I think I'm not talking about the Kenya one. There is the oldest one in the Himalayas. He was it's in my book. He was somebody who was a Mongoloid, and from him, the race of this entire Northeast, which went to your Asian country, touched part of the Andaman. So these were the oldest people, and they are not the tribes we normally know of. So all these were indigenous Indian people. And then the Western scholars came with this divide, saying that, okay, the first human was formed in Africa, and then the migration happened, and all this thing, blah, blah, blah. And then Darwin further jumps in, and then he says that, okay, I cannot say with definitive, but again, the monkeys came from the tree, and from a biped, they became bipedal. They started walking straight. All these things are theory. We are not saying that it should not be taken as one of the source for discussion of our humanity. But again, we believe in Vishnu Dasavtaram. We have our own version of evolution, and which is very scientific, which says that we, from water to land to that's how we grew. And that's where our Vishnu Dasavtaram is so much relevant. I'm saying that when you talk all this thing to your kids, create enough excitement to them to do research, right? And people will say that, okay, India is not developed, we have to first develop, set up a career, and all those things. Again, I'm coming back to that. It does not conflict. This knowledge does not conflict the current modern knowledge, which is needed, which is also needed for your day-to-day life. Both can coexist, but do not discard the other, because your root is this. And anybody, however developed you become, if you are not um, recognizing your root, you are nobody. And that's what we found when we moved to West. People are so strongly trying to relate with their roots, and there's nothing wrong. And here we have like treasure, and we are trying to dissociate from that. So that would be one of my um, thing for the people, that we should be more close to our roots. Now, very quickly, I will go to this Aryan, Dravidian, and Adivasi divide. I'll just read a paragraph of my book, and then I'll discuss. Because if you hear, people will say, well, this is not relevant anymore because a lot of things are happening. But if you remember, very recently, one of the opposition parties leader created or rather gave a statement between North and South divide, and that's where this Aryan and Dravidian theory plays in, which was very well carved by the Western scholars. And till date, we have not overcome this. So um, for the Aryan theory, all I can say is this whole Aryan invasion theory, Aryan migration theory, they have been rested. This was all created by Western scholars. There is nothing as such. Yes, India is a land which had multiple ethnicities, and many people. Uh, when you say ethnicities, yes, we have multiple language, and cultural, food, eating habit, everything changes. There are 3,000 plus languages. So if that was the reason to divide a country, we would have 3,000 countries. But from north to south, east to west, you have Ram Rajya concept. You have same deities, almost same deities being prayed across the country, right? We have same value system, right? So this is the binding, this is the glue which binds the India, Bharat, right? Um, if you further research, and because of the time, if you go to, I'll just give some reference from my book. When I was researching, I found that from the Kashmir to the Kanyakumari, there is a commonly used tribe called Nag tribe, right? So Kashmiris have their own Nagas. In Kerala, they have their own Nagas. So see the commonality. Similarly, peacock. Peacock is being used from north to south everywhere. So the whole spread, this Aryavat land, there are a lot of such anecdotes which I have put in my book, which says that culturally we were same. We are same. Ethnicity wise, yes, we are different. And division of the state in 1960, after 1947 we got independence, Indians got independent. 1950 the constitution came, and then there was like, just like America had 13 major states, and then later on became 50. India also, just after independence, they were like, I think around 10 or 15 major states. And then a master stroke was done, and then in 1960 or 62 they divided each state based on linguistic language, and which was, I think, the reason why we will always be united. Because the way Russia broke, USSR broke, the way some other countries will break tomorrow, is because the ethnicity and the local or the regional aspiration is not met in the Western idea of the nation state, right? And that is where in India it was a master stroke, where by and large language and the culture was used to form different states. So people aspiration was met regionally, but from the country perspective, they were all part of the India. There will be always some kind of a movement going on, because humans have the nature, right? There will be people who will have some issues, but by and large, this is one of the reasons why we are united, because the ethnic aspiration is strongly met and satisfied in Indian um, land. So that is one of the reasons why we are united. Then comes the language, right? Officially, if you don't take a political stand, if you read constitution, no language has been considered as a national language of India. No language, even Hindi was not considered as a national language. It was the official language. That's what it was written, and that's how it should be. I mean, language, culture should unite rather than divide. If some states have problem, we can solve it. No, we don't have to enforce anyone. That's where my idea of India, and I think that's what even Ambedkar ji has also written uh, about the idea of India. So these are we are very flexible in that way. Indians, they have been very flexible, and that's why India as a country will always survive, because it's driven by Mahabharata and Ramayana and other texts, rather than a nation state which was just 400 years old idea when Western civilization came into prominence. Okay, so that is one of the reason why we are united. Then my last chapter in this book, which I have covered, I have basically divided different analogy: auto synchronous analogy, supercilious analogy, then LCA is a language driven analogy. So for today's talk, I think we have 15 more minutes. I will very quickly touch upon the supercilious analogy, where I have given in my book RSS model, idea of India, Macaulay, Myron, Venner analysis, ethnicity, and all those things, and what unites. So I think a lot of people in past, they have called India a cradle of human civilization, because the new research in Rakhigari, Haryana, done by IIT Kharagpur, has moved the dates from 5,000 year civilization to 8,000 old year civilization. And remember, India is still a developing country. India has still not set up a research and analysis wing of the highest order, where the anthropology, your history, science, right, and gene theory, all those things comes into one department, and scholars are hired to do research. We haven't even dug our one layer or two layers below the earth to find our civilization. We are that rich, right? And it will time will come when, when country prospers, then some money from your day-to-day activity. Right now India is so much starved, the way British left us, taking away $45 trillion of our economy, draining and making us one of the poorest country of the world. From there, we have done a fabulous job so far to becoming a vaccine power of the world. See, vaccine, we always thought that the West has the best medical system. Yes, they have. They have the best research. Yes, they have. But who came out with a vaccine? So, given just one platform, we excel. So there are a lot of other areas. All I want to say to our scholars is, don't keep on blindly quoting Mr. So and so from Harvard or Princeton or whatever is best in Toronto or Oxford. You have to have you become Mr. Who and Who. You have to come out with your own research. And history and anthropology, as I mentioned earlier, I will never accept whether it comes from even topmost brain of the world, because he will always have a vested interest. The Western scholars, they were driven by the biblical timeline of 4,000 years. They see everything 4,000 years. To even associate that civilization can be 40,000 years, or there is a famous story of Kag Bhusundi, or from Sati to Uma, for people who understand, who know a little bit of Shiv and Parvati story. Sati died, and then for her to become a Parvati, it was like around 1 lakh years. Now this looks so what do you call it, beyond imagination to the modern science. But now the same modern science, when they talk about the light year, right? When they talk about the lights coming from million light years away from some planet to Earth, and they have not reached Earth. So they are not talking about the scale when it comes to universe, right? But when it comes to Earth, they're all like still sticking to their biblical timeline of 4,000, 5,000, 4,005. They are like stuck to that. A research or an open-minded brain cannot be so fixated, and that's where we are challenging that. The challenging means that you should not be on defensive. Okay, you should not always fall into the trap of discussion of the timeline, because that is one of the trump card people will always use against you. When they talk about the ancient Sanatan civilization, they always bring the timeline, prove it. But none of their things have been proven. But you go on defensive and you start proving, no, Mahabharata was this old, or Ramayana was this old. You don't have to be that defensive. Yes, research, antiquity, the carbon dating, everything has to change, and it has to come from your IITs, your engineering colleges, your people working in Princeton, Harvards, and Oxford of the world to come out with a new scale. It's not that everything Western is wrong, but what I'm saying is, when it comes to these kind of thing, where it comes to race, we all know that West is not clean. You see what happened in America, BLM. You see what happening in UK with the Royal Palace, with Miss Merkel. West is not clean. Okay. And we proudly say that. Maybe we have to start a brown life matters, where you see what's happening in Rutgers University, where one professor is saved by the entire college, just that she can have her own idea, which can even go against 1 point some billion people. And that 1 point some billion people gave 150 countries of the world a respite from the corona pandemic. You need to understand things into that perspective, is what I'm trying to say. Doesn't mean everybody is your enemy, but it also does not mean that you will take everybody knowledge to define you, who you are. And that's where my problem is, and that's where I would encourage people to do their own research whenever they are in their life, become they become something, their other requirement has been met. You go ahead and do research, and invest time. Maybe if you can't do it, encourage your younger generation to read and research in the right perspective, because knowledge is nobody's fiefdom. our kids are much smarter. They can definitely do research in the right perspective. So, having said that, these are some of the pictures. We all know that the Jambudvip concept, even in the West archaeology and geography, they said that Himalaya was created by the India as an island when they collided with the Asian mask, when they broke from the Madagascar, and now Madagascar was connected to Africa. Now that's where the Himalaya was formed. I think some 50 million years back or something. And while doing research, it was very interesting to find that swastika. So again, now coming back to the BLM, right? A little bit of political part. How sensitive America is today, or the West is today, with this BLM, right? The whole government changed. Now it's a time when brown life matters. And it's a high time when we should not hide our swastika in USA or Canada because it has been tagged wrongly with some Hitler Nazi group, right? If other lives matter, our symbols and our lives also matter. And this is where we have to inculcate that kind of a civilizational um, understanding of our culture. And this is how the Bharat will be united, because whether you are a Tamilian, whether you are a Telugu or a Bihari or a UP guy, Bharat is same for you. You all are from the land of Mahabharat, land of Ramayana, and this is our unity. This will never break, irrespective of what language or food we eat or talk. And so, coming to the swastika, it's found in Ghana, and it's found in Iran. All these are very ancient in Greece. So these are some of the findings they had, and which I'm giving here. A lot of research to unearth the Sanatan, the ancient Indian timeline. Right, Britishers gave around, I think, 1200 for Rig Vedas and some 3000 years for our civilization, and later it was pushed to 5000. But those are all, I would say, if you don't mind my word, BS. It has to come from indigenous scholars, and there are a lot of people who are doing in IIT Kharagpur, like the finding of the horse training manual, the sizes of the horse, right? All those things, the chariot, the exact see this picture. We have seen the famous Mahabharata TV serial. See the construct of this Bhishma chariot. See this finding. See this chariot here. This is the wheel. This is the chariot. See exactly. So again, the set designer were influenced by this, but this is 7,000-year-old chariot found in UP in excavation, and this is just one of the dig. We haven't even dug because our population is so much on all these historical things that a city has come. You cannot go further dive. There is no technology which can go, say, 50,000 years down and find things in right perspective. So why should we not stick to our scriptures, which has mentioned and given all these ideas? Okay. And one last thing I would say to all the people who are always on defensive whenever antiquity and dates are mentioned. First of all, don't get into the trap of dates, because you will not win, because you have to do a lot of research. The second thing is, and I will read very quickly from one of the posting which recently somebody had. So there is a scientist in 1994, Miguel Alubere, right? He had proposed that there is something called wrap the space time. So how would you, if you have to travel from Earth to, say, a different galaxy, it will take millions and millions of light years. You will never reach. Okay. So when we talk about Sati to Uma, 1 lakh years in Kailash, and for the rest of the people, it looked like things just happened. But for Shiv and Parvati, it was like a million kalpas, right? Some kalpas went before she became Uma, because then they had to go. How this was possible? The modern science is proving it. There is a concept called wrap the space time. So take a handkerchief, right? So spread a handkerchief. Now this the two ends of handkerchief think they are space, right? So one is your Earth and another is some galaxy. Now, if you have to reach to the other end of the handkerchief, what you can do is you can start folding your handkerchief, right, into four fold, then further another fold. So you keep on folding it till the both the end touches each other. This is called space wrap time. Scientifically, scientists are working on that idea where they can use this concept to reach to the other galaxy, which is like, it will look to the ordinary people, it's a time, it's like, just like a just like this, right? And then you are reaching to the other end. So there are different dimensions involved, right? It will look as if you have reached to the different space within a fraction of a second, but actually that is an idea. All these ideas were in our scriptures, but people took it only from a story point of view, because we were not ready, we were not, no, there is definitely a gap, and we were so much obsessed by the colonial masters and English that we totally forgot that, what are the hidden treasures in our scriptures. So having said that, in the concluding part, all I will say is India is a nation of multiple ethnicities. Um, the Aryan, the Dravidian, the Adivasis. Adivasis are the indigenous people from where we are formed. The new genetic research says that all the Indian gene pools come from a 60,000-year-old South Indian mother somewhere in near Andhra and AP border, Andhra and Tamil Nadu border, somewhere near that. Now, there is no Andhra and no Tamil Nadu in the olden time, but this is what the gene theory says. And she was the source from where we had all the we had the DNA, right? So with that, I will conclude saying that we are all same. There is no Aryan, there's no Dravidian, because we are all admixture as of now. As of now, if you do the DNA analysis, there is no Tamilian who has a so-called Dravidian gene. There is no North Indian or West Indian who has a Aryan gene. These all admixture of multiple genes, right? And this admixture didn't happen 2,000, 3,000 years back. It happened many, many years back. And the migration, which the Western scholars want us to believe was from outside to inward, is actually from inside to outward also. If you read the Pashurama's story, when he fought against the Kshatriyas, there was a lot of Kshatriyas who ran away from India, and some went to even the European countries, Greece and others. And if you do the gene pool analysis, you will see a lot of similarities. So there are a lot of theories, a lot of books, a lot of research has been done. I mentioned some in my book. And as we talk again, we will discuss those in detail. In fact, I went for my gene DNA analysis here to find out who am I? Do I have anything from other race? And I had interesting results. I will discuss that maybe next time. And it's mentioned in my book as well. So with that, Samir ji and Prashad ji, thank you very much. And I'm ready for the question. Thank you, people, for listening to me.
So we have one question in the chat window by Padmaji, which she asked that did Max Muller propose Aryan theory?
Well, Max Muller, Aryan theory was given by many other scholars. Max Muller also had a theory where he was trying to denounce the Sanskrit, and he said the Western education is what will liberate us from the darkness. So, and it was, and he came from a family who had a religious orientation, and he wrote letters. His letter is also available on internet nowadays, where you can see. I've also mentioned in my book, where he wrote how he was portraying a very negative image of the very rich ancient Indian civilization. So Aryan theory was given by a lot of people, and yes, that was the time when colonial masters were at their best in spinning off. Nowadays the spinning theory, the marketing, people will spin things and people start believing. And if you're in the stock market, you will see them that ME stocks, right? People, it's based on the sentiment. These people were master in that. Yeah.
Tapasji, please go ahead.
Yeah. Namaste. The question I had was, when we refer to the word Adivasi, we in modern India, we are actually talking about people who are right now living in jungles, the tribes. But literally, Adivasi means the original people of the country. So who
Correct.
can be Nagarvasi or Vanvasi. And why I'm saying this is, if we keep repeating the Adivasi word for the people living in the jungles, the tribes, we are inadvertently supporting what the Europeans wanted us to believe, that all civilized, urbanized people are coming from outside and the original people live in jungle. And even today, like if you look at the the current government, which is pro nationalist, pro Hindu government, even there they use this word Adivasi for the tribal people. So I think this distinction has to be brought out very clearly, that Adivasi means all original people. We can be Nagarvasi or Vanvasi. What do you think about that?
I totally agree with you. In fact, I would prefer Vanavasi better than Adivasi, but just because for the larger people to understand, and because of the time thing, I meant Adivasi. But I agree to what you said. Yes. Uh,
Sudhaji has typed in a long question. She says that, do you agree that we need to take this bull by the horn and drive AI innovation and laying on the foundation of our ancient wisdom?
yes, yes, definitely. In fact, there are a lot of people who have already written the historical aspect of our book, but it has not been yet included in our curriculum. Artificial intelligence can definitely help in a great way, um, but I think uh, uh, we have to do our research, right? When I was talking to a few professors, so I won't name, and this is a little anecdotal. There was a professor from a very reputed college, Ivy College of India, from as far as history department is concerned. He brought his daughter to one of the friend of mine who runs a coaching institute for civil services. He said, can you please teach my daughter history so that she does good in civil services? He said, hey, you emirate professor in Ivy College. He said, well, we studied long time back, and the era of Romila Thappers and Irfan Habib is no more. So you are more relevant. Can you teach? And this guy is still on a paycheck and getting. So what I'm trying to say is, it's youth who has to come and challenge this people, the status quo, right? And AI, if a technology enables any such knowledge to our youth, I'm for it. So a lot needs to be done. People, that's what I'm saying. Just because somebody said and he's from some reputed Padma Sri, or you should not be awed by it, is what I'm trying to challenge. That's where our youth has to see. In India, still the mindset of who is who. And even if that guy, that the reason why I gave you this coach, that example of that girl is, he's for the world, he looks like a scholar from Ivy College teaching history, but when it comes to the subject, he's not confident that his daughter will make it. So he's coming to a coaching institute. So this is where I'm challenging, and people need to understand that. Yeah. Rajesh Bayani. Let me read one. I just saw this, just popped up. Can you inform us about the theory I think proposed by? So see, Rajesh, BB Lal Ji is I have personally met him in 2019 in his house. He lives in Hajkos. He's very old now. BB Lal student was K. Muhammad, who did all the research and the Ayodhya thing, right? Uh, and he comes frequently on a lot of channels. BB Lal, from theory perspective, a lot of things is good, right? He challenged then people, but from dateline, even he was also not very sure, right? And that's where you have to respect him. But at age of 80 or something, his date of Rig Veda was like 1200 or 1500 years old only. Now he was also basing it based on some of his, but he hasn't done research on that. So your question is, can you inform us about theory I proposed by BB Lalji? What theory are you said Aryans from India? Yes, BB Lal. See again, a BB Lalji or even Ravindranath Tagore on his idea of nation, or even whoever. Country is much bigger than an individual, however big they are. And BB Lalji is a very respected person. In fact, he's one of the very he is a great person who actually challenged a lot of secular way of thinking at very early time, and he had to face that. But again, country and civilization is much bigger. An individual cannot be bigger than these things. Even Rabindranath Tagore, I have a lot of respect, but his idea of Bharat, or even Munshi Premchand, his idea of Bharat, they were all driven by the societal changes happening at that time. If you read Munshi Premchand, if you're a Hindi literature or Urdu literature person, he has written a lot of things. He said, we don't want the country, at that time there was during his time, society was going through the dowry system, the caste system. So he had seen things from that perspective. But today, when you sit and see from a holistic nation perspective, none of the individuals, every individual will be a dwarf when it comes to your country, Bharat. This is my take on it. Okay, next. India was the first. Padma Srinivasan. India was first. India was first world before it was plundered. Can we give a better label to India than? Yeah, I mean, see, first world, third world. Let the Western people say whatever. You believe what you are. We proudly uh, see and idea, name and some kind of symbol identification, a certain kind of dress. This is all very Western way of thinking. We are a country where we have 3,000 languages, so many ethnicities, right? We don't try to say that Bharat means this, only dhoti and only we are different people. So we should not be. Yes, we should fight, but we should not be too much overwhelmed with what West says. If India was a third world country, 150 countries in the world would not line up to take vaccine drugs. So, but yes, we should be proudly displaying it. That's what I'm saying. People who are now US and Canadian citizens, they should be sending their kids not to only technology college but to the law college, where if you put swastika outside your house and if somebody comes and say there's a pagan sign, put 100 lawsuit against those buggers. Now it's a time when you need to start dominating, because we are proud Americans, we are proud Canadian, we are proud whoever we are here, but we as a person and representing our oldest civilization, we bring a lot of value here, right? We have never done any mass improvement or any law and order situation. We have only given to this country, whether it's a tax or whether it's education. Feel proud of that, and where it is coming from. Why are we like that? Because of the civilizational heritage we bring, we are from. So West better needs to understand. It's a high time when you go with the begging ball. You have to be, stand shoulder to shoulder and say who you are. They have to understand. If they have to learn to spell your name correctly, instead of you trying to show that your English skill by pronouncing their name so correctly that that's your, as if that's your academic qualification. So again, I'm next question, please.
Yeah, the next one is my 1+3T. Can you read it?
Okay, let me read. Concepts in our religious texts are deep and intricate, at times conflicting to simple mind. Who can be authority to bring one thought line to this diversity? Yes, nobody can. It's such a deep that, see, first of all, majority of the discussion is happening only on the very peripheral level. Whether it's a Puranas is a story, but the deeper science, Purana is like, I would say, engineering technology, right? You have a robot, but the science behind it is in your Vedas, your Upanishads. That's where the philosophical aspect of your text comes, right? Um, Unfortunately, we are not that straightforward civilization where one book can tell us everything, right? We still have to read Puranas from a story perspective. We have to read Ramayana and Mahabharata from historical perspective. Even though Gita has Upanishad kind of teaching, yes, but if you want to know the philosophical aspect of humanity, conscious, etc., that's where Upanishad and Vedas comes into the picture. So there can't be one scholar. Even in our ancient time, not one person wrote one book. The Valmiki, Vyas, or so many people wrote Vedas. So it can't be one person. Tapas Ghosh. Hey Tapas, we have to consciously bring in Nagarvasi and Vanvasi, as all of us are Adivasi. And that way future generation will learn we are all Adivasis. Will negate your theories. Well, again, I've heard different views. Just now, somebody was also mentioning about not calling Adivasis. Adivasi looks like little, it's like a primitive and all those things. Uh, I'm okay with if so name calling is something different, but for me it's a concept or idea more important. But yeah, if we call it Vanavasi, Nagarvasi, well, is a very modern idea. So you know that may not go with, say, Vanavasi is not only person who dwells in a jungle. It's a whole jungle way of life, right? The whole cultivation, not cutting the trees, you survive, your whole entire community surviving on the herbs and sunshine and the food from given from the nature. It's an idea. Vanvasi is not just simple individual living with half dressed in a jungle environment. It's not like that. It's not a Hollywood movie. Vanvasi to me is an idea, and it's a great idea. In fact, modern humanity will eventually move to that kind of idea where we should learn whatever nature is giving to you, that should be enough for us to survive. So that's the whole idea of Vanvasi. They have so lot of lovely concept. I would say, if as we mature as a nation, India, there has to be a research. You have a 60,000-year-old Andaman tribe, the Jarwa tribe, 60,000 years old, officially agreed by Western scholars, living human kind, where you can do so much research. But we haven't gone to that level. First of all, we should not expose them, but keeping their secrecy and everything in mind, there's so many things to learn, how they have survived, right? What kind of immunity they have built, right? So one corona happens and we all face so much problem. So many things to learn from these people. So yeah. Okay, Kaushik Ramprasad, true, it's not true tribal oil inhabitants, then outside of that. Yeah, agree.
So looks like there's no more
Okay, I have
questions.
one quick question. Sorry, Samir. One quick question, Prasad here. So, the Russians or the USSR, former USSR, broke away into multiple countries. They wanted to bring it together. They did. Now they broke away. Now, Europeans, all the little countries in Europe, although their underlying culture is the same, they were also they formed multiple countries along in the period of several hundred years. Now they want to come back as an EU, although it's an economic concept, but still they want to come together. So what is the difference between the concept of nationhood between the former USSR, now the new EU, and the concept of nationhood in Bharat?
So I think Russia was, I think after the Tsars, before that, Russia is also is an interesting diversity where they had added so many tribes, especially the Muslim dominated those areas, and the western part of the Russia, right? And that's the primarily it was more on a religion divide, which was Christianity versus the others. Um, in the Russia, in Europe, it was even though one religion, but it was more on a modern day uh, the way the army would form the different country and expand their influence, right? So as I mentioned in the beginning, before colonial power, they brought their own concept of nation, and even Japan, not to be far, they had the superiority concept based on their way of thinking at during before the World War, right? So India was very different, right? India was mainly a conglomerate of all the different ethnicities. And for us, as I mentioned, our four pillars was our very idea of Bharat was based on karma, moksha, kama, those things, rather than just the idea of a land or a political entity. These were all political entities. To me, Europe was more political entity. Russia was mix of that. I think religion and political entity, and India was is the fourth thing which I had mentioned. And that's my understanding. But if you want, you can add, Prashad, if you have some different understanding. Yeah.
Okay. Looks like there's no more questions anymore. Anyway, thanks for a very informative session, Sharadji.